So this is going to be a quick overview of the problem statement and the basic idea that we have come up with as Team ASMR. The problem statement is uh, basically a crowdsourcing model for preparing large question banks. So the basic idea that we have come up with is creating a web and an application platform, a native mobile application platform that will facilitate the curation of the questions and also the review of the questions. There is also a business perspective or business prospect that we have come up with. So we'll look into it through the user flow diagram. So this is the tech stack basically that we are going to be using. So React.js, Tailwind CSS for the web front end, then Django and PostgreSQL for the backend, Hugging Face Flask for the natural language processing and ML models that we are going to be developing. And for deployment, we are going to be using Docker and Kubernetes. And for the mobile app front, we are going to be using Flutter. And lastly, we are also setting up rewards. So these are going to be based off of Truffle in the form of NFTs. So this is the basic user flow, or rather in general the flow of the platform. So we have typically there are just 4 flows. The first one is the problem setter. The problem setter is basically the person who will be setting the problems, and as this is a crowdsourced platform, anybody can become a problem setter. The only thing that the problem setter needs is he or she needs to take up an assignment which will kind of filter out the people who actually have knowledge in that domain, and if they pass that test, then they'll be able to contribute to the question bank. The second role is of the problem reviewer. So this role will be a sort of filter that will help in assessing the questions. So whatever questions are being submitted by the problem setter will need to be reviewed by at least one reviewer, and the reviewer will also be adding in the tags for the question. For example, this question belongs to the subject of OS, DBMS, etc. And also assign a difficulty score, whether this question is 9 out of 10 in difficulty, 4 out of 10 in difficulty, and even assess the correctness of the question. So this is the role of the reviewer. If the reviewer has already signed up, the reviewer will be directly given the questions based on the tag preferences given. If the user is signing up for the first time, he or she will be directed to an assessment which will then basically qualify them for reviewing questions. If they pass the assessment, they just need to select the tags in which they think they have expertise in. The third role is the institute of the company. So this is where the business aspect of the platform comes in. So any institute who wants to conduct a test will be able to just query the platform for a number of questions, the difficulty of the questions, and the number of students or the users that are going to be appearing for the test. After that, the institute will get a price quotation. Upon payment, the test will be scheduled, and the users, that are the students, will be able to log in and select a test in which they have been added in, and their test will be evaluated and then submitted to the institute. Now let's get into the NLP part of the system. So we'll basically be adding an NLP system, that is the natural language processing system, which will semi-automate the process of checking the originality of the question, whether a similar question exists in the database or not. Also verify the correctness of the questions, whether a particular question is correct or not, and also verify the category. So if a category is submitted by the problem setter but the question doesn't fall into that category, then that can also be kind of corrected using the NLP system. And the last one is analyzing the difficulty of the question. So these can be automated or semi-automated by the NLP system, and for keeping that in check, we'll also have the reviewers review these things that have been predicted by the NLP system. So this is the basic model, and also as a part of incentive for the problem setter and problem reviewer, we will be having rewards. So problem setters and problem reviewers will be getting paid monetarily for a certain set of questions that they successfully submit. So the problem setter, for the criteria for the problem setter will be the questions that have been successfully submitted and verified by a reviewer, and similarly for the reviewer, the problems that have been successfully verified by them. And also we'll also be having a reward system that will be in the form of badges. So upon completion of certain milestones, the problem setter, problem reviewer, and even the institute and the students will be getting certain badges which will be in the form of NFTs. So that is where the blockchain aspect of the platform comes into play. And all of this will be stored, all of the questions will be stored in the centralized database, which will be the PostgreSQL database. So this is a kind of brief overview of the platform that we are going to propose, or the model we are going to be proposing. Now for the reviewing system, we will have a certain check on the reviewers as well as the setters to keep them in check. So we'll basically be having a ranking system so that no reviewer gets row, or no problem setter gets authority to just set any kind of problems. Now we also have a certain number of things that we have added in the future scope. So the institute part of the things and basically the scheduling of the tests has been moved to a future scope, because that is not directly into the crowdsourcing model for the creation of the problems, as the problem statement suggests. Also, we are going to be proposing a system for unrated tests. So any user can basically take up tests which will be sample tests, which will be used for assessing the difficulty level of the questions, because it might happen that a question is classified as a certain difficulty level but it might be wrong. So for reorganizing or reassessing or adjusting the value of the difficulty of the questions, we'll be having this unrated tests for which monetary or NFT based rewards would be given out to the users. This will also be implemented in the tests. So whenever a question is given to the students, as we have a large sample size of students, based on the performance of the students on that question, we can readjust the difficulty level of that question. For example, if a question is marked as very hard but all the students are able to essentially solve it, it might not be that hard, so the difficulty level will be adjusted based on that. Now let me direct you to the UI mockups that we have created. So this is going to be the UI for the application, for the web front. So we have come up with the name that is going to be Quizzle. This is the question adding screen, so where the problem setter will be able to add questions. This is the screen where the user will be able to see the questions that have been added by that user. This is the login screen, this is the register screen, and this is the sign up screen or the login screen. So this is the basic flow that we have come up with so far. We'll be adding in the flows for the reviewer, the institutes, as well as the students in the future. For the idea submission, we have come up with this. So this was a brief overview of our problem statement and the idea that we have come up with to solve that problem. This has been the idea of Team ASMR. Thank you.